All right, my weekend warriors. I thought I'd put a little something together for y'all here this afternoon. Like nothing fancy. Jump into the mic, fire up the cursor, and address something that, someone just texted me about, right? So I had a text from actually a family member, right, who's interested in a micro SaaS, right, building out a micro SaaS. She asked me a particular question, and my thing was, hey, go check it out, right? Maybe you can try build it yourself, because she's pretty technical, and she asked me for a few tips, and I said one of the biggest things that you can do is just to make sure that you give your AI agent some rules to work with, right? Again, she's technical, so she knew what I was talking about. And the next question was, how do I do that? And it made me realize that a lot of my weekend warriors out here who are maybe coding and building a few things out in the micro SaaS world may not know how to do like cursor rules, right? Turns out, right, there are two ways to do them. I am actually going to walk you really quickly through in this video and talk a little bit about the difference between the two, show you how to set it up, and hopefully I'll provide you some value over this weekend as you code towards your dreams. Now, as always and as usual, I wish you will build your micro SaaS with us, at the Micro SaaS Platform Factory. Check us out at microsaasplatformfactory.com, right? But maybe, obviously, like my family member, you're technical enough to build it yourself, right? Don't forget that there's still distribution. We can help with that. And maybe you may still need my help on a consulting standpoint just to get your micro SaaS to the next level. So check me out at chrismoranci.com, right? So with that shameful plug out of the way, let's get back into the business of actually providing you some value, and let's dive into it. Now, what I have in front of me here, right, I have my Cursor IDE open. As you can see, I have a little project called Nutrition App. There's nothing in it right now. I'm just about to kick it off. It's going to be a nutrition app that I'm looking at building with another family member, just actually my sister this time. I'm actually going to sort of like build that out and start, seeing what that landing page looks like. And for me, with this one, normally I kind of do like React, Next.js applications. For this one, I'm taking a slightly different approach. Well, not slightly, I'm taking a different approach, right? I'm doing like plain HTML, right? I'm going to actually deploy it on Cloudflare using Cloudflare workers or Cloudflare pages, which means I'm going to be using like Cloudflare functions and stuff like that for API calls to store information like submitted forms, submitted data for forms, newsletter submissions, right? We're going to ask for on the landing page. And I said to myself, well, I don't do this much, right? I don't build like this much. I usually build, as I said, Next.js, React. I go like, I don't build like this much. And, someone just asked me about rules. So I said, you know what? I'm going to set up rules. I should just make a video about rules, right? Because they might be able to help somebody out. So that's what I'm doing right now. You can look in my project. You'll see that I have the more modular approach to rules. I have a .cursor folder, and in there I have rules, and I have like what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7 rules. Tell the truth, that's a little bit of overkill with me breaking it down and using the modular approach, but that's just me. That's how I like to do things. I like to go super best practices when I can. I will say, if you're doing a landing page, you maybe just need to do the single file approach. So with that being said, let me show you exactly how you come up, right, or how you set up rules in Cursor, right? So again, there are two ways, right? There are two ways to do rules. You can actually do a .cursor rules file right in your root, and I actually want to show you this. Actually, let me reference this here really quick, because if you're coming from here from my LinkedIn post, you will note that I actually uploaded a actual PDF file with all these details. You can also follow them, use them as a guide, right? So again, you have two approaches. You have the single file approach, and then you have the modular approach, which you're seeing me doing right now, right? So for the single file approach, I'm going to show you how to do this, right? It's actually pretty simple. What you're going to do is that you're going to create a cursor rules file in root, right? So you have the root of the project here. It's nutrition underscore app. For those of us new to this, the root of your project is just the folder that you're building your project in, right? So I can come in here, I can right click, right, according to what you're using, right? And you go to, okay, I need to create a cursor file. So it's just a .cursor rules. So I go here, new file, .cursor rules, boom. And I have a cursor rules file, right? So right now it's empty, right? And what you want to do is you now want to actually go grab some cursor rules that might be available, or you want to build them yourself. So you say, well, Chris, how do I get cursor rules that are actually available? Well, the cool thing is this. There is a website that is really good, right, at providing some templates for cursor rules. So let me actually bring that up here for y'all. Give me 1 second. It's cursor. It's called cursor.directory. Cursor.directory. And let me see if I can actually share that on my screen here so you can actually see. So I'm just gonna add that to the recording. Let me add a output source. A display capture actually will do. Yeah, I'll actually share my entire screen here. There you go. So you'll see my screen right now, and this is where it is, right? It's cursor.directory. So if you go to cursor.directory, you will come across, obviously you'll land on this page. You'll go over to rules, and when you click over to rules, there's a bunch of different rules for different situations, right? So rules for if you're just gonna doing TypeScript projects, rules for if you're doing Python projects, Next.js projects, React projects. I mean, the list just goes on, right? So pretty snazzy sort of like resource that you want to use. So you're just gonna go through them and kind of look at what kind of project that you're building, and you can kind of like select a rules file that actually works for you, right? So let's say, for example, I'm just kind of like doing like a straight up JavaScript, right, project. Let me kind of find the right one. Kind of look through these. All right, let me just look at web development. Again, none of these really match what I'm doing, to tell the truth, but I want to show you exactly how easy it would be for most people, right? Because most people will be following most likely like a Next.js or a Route or a React kind of pattern. So for example, this will most likely what you're using. So if you're using, for example, V0 from Vercel, right? V0 from Vercel, a lot of people use that. This would be like a nice sort of like, rule for you right here. Senior front-end developer, React.js, Next.js, JavaScript, TypeScript, HTML, CSS, Tailwind, Chat CDN, right? That's V0. That's your V0 stack right here. So if I go here, that's going to come in here, and you're just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy this here. You can click at the bottom, right? And then you can just come here, drop it, come back over here into your project, and you just simply paste this in, right? You simply like paste this in. And if you, once you paste this in, boom, you're ready to go, right? Your rules are now in play. And then what you can do then is that you actually go here to your view. You want to click on command palette, and once you click on the on command palette, you want to just kind of search because it might not show up for you like it did for me, because right, you just want to do developer. Oh, is that good? Oh, let's see. Did I lose it? View command palette. There you go. You want to go developer reload window. Once you do that, that'll sort of like reload. As you can see, it's reloading the cursor IDE. And then now your rules are already now being read, right? They're already being read when you actually put in a request through the cursor agent right here, right? And I can actually come in and I can actually ask that question. I can go like, what rules are being followed? You see, and it's kind of thinking, it's saying, hey, the user looking at the .cursor rules file and wants to know what rules are being followed. And that should actually kind of come out and be like, hey, here's the rules that are being followed. No, I will say that I have conflicts here right now because I do have a .cursor rules file and I do have the modular file set up. This is something that you do not want to do. But again, for the purpose of the video, right, I'm just kind of showing you how that's being done. See, right now it says, hey, I'm looking at the .cursor rules file to list the effective rules being enforced. It's going to come back, obviously read this rules file, and it's going to just kind of spit out to you what it's actually seeing, at least summarize it. So again, that step, again, it doesn't really actively do anything, right? In terms of asking what rules are being followed, you're just basically doing this, right? So that at the end of the day, you know if your rules were picked up. Right, you can see all the rules that are being listed out here. So this looks actually really good. Actually, let me go ahead and let me hide the screen right now and go back. Right, so there you go. So this is one way of doing it, right? It's like using the singular .cursor rules file, right? And that's going to be located in the root of your project, right? The root of your folder, right? So that's one way of doing this, right? And in the PDF that is on LinkedIn, right? Or you can check my site for it, chrismorency.com. You go onto the resources area. You will be able to download that, but you will see, right? I talk about when you want to do this, right? You usually do that dot cursor rules singular file approach when it's a small project like a landing page, right? It's just you working on the project, right? That's pretty simple. You do like a single, rules file. The other approach is if the project gets a little bit more complex, you have multiple people working on it, you have so many rules that you want to break the rules down into different domains like security versus APIs versus front end, right? You want to then use the second approach, which I'm about to show you, right? So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to go ahead and delete the cursor rules file, right? And I'm going to do the other approach. Now, for the other approach, it's actually pretty simple. Kind of like the same approach. You're going to right click here. You're going to say new folder, right? And in this case, you're going to do dot cursor slash rules, right? And when you do that, it will create the folder. I'm not going to do it right now because I already have the folder, and it will actually create this dot cursor slash rules folder. And then all you do at this point is that you look at the rules that you have and you say, do I want to break it down into like different actual rules files? And you do that by domain, as I said earlier on, right? So you'll usually do an overview, right? Which is kind of like your global project rules. And I'll say this is all about setting up project rules. This is not about setting up, the universal rules across all your projects. This is about rules for the actual project. So the overview would be like, hey, this is like high level rules for the project, right? Like stack and hosting, assistant behavior, modules, an overview file. And then you'll see that I go into domains here like security, APIs, front end, ops, forms and bots, right? Because again, this is a landing page. I want to protect against bots for my forms. So I'm going to be using different things, some Cloudflare, to be able to actually make that work properly. And then obviously I have like a nutrition app rules, right? So if you look at this, I am breaking down my rules into different domains. And you say, well, Chris, how do I do that? Again, it's actually pretty simple. You don't have to overthink this. You could, again, if you're in here and you grab a rules file, right, that you want to work for you. And again, I'm back to the cursor.directory, right? So let's say I had the rules that I got from cursor.directory. I could simply just bring these rules over here, right? And I can say, hey, create, you say, I want to take a modular approach, break these into domain specific rules and place here. And then when I say place here, I'm just going to take the folder and I'm going to drag it into the conversation, right? So now obvious cursor now knows that I want to drop them into here. It knows I want to do domain specific. I might say something as well as also ensure there is an overview rules doc as well, right? And then once you do that, you hit enter. Again, I have this in like the ask mode, so it's not going to write it for me. You can just go in agent mode, and agent mode will actually write the files for you and all that kind of stuff. So I'm going to keep it in ask mode, and I'm just going to hit send so you can actually see it generate the different MDC files. But again, just heads up, if you're doing this for real, make sure that you run in agent mode so the files can actually be created. So let's give it a few minutes as it generates these rules for us. Now, while this is being done, I just full transparency, my rules file I didn't get from the website, right? I didn't get that from cursor.template, cursor.directory. I didn't get it from cursor.directory. I created my rules file. And for a heads up for someone, if they don't find a rules file that works for them for what they're building, it's just very simple. Go to ChatGPT, go to Claude, go to Gemini, and just have a conversation with it on the project that you're building. And for the context and the role, tell it that it is a system engineer. You're building this particular project. Ask it to recommend rules for you, and then have a conversation with it back and forth, right? Make sure you do deep reflection, right? Always ensure that to ask it, hey, are you sure? Check again, all right? Say things like, hey, I want to ensure that we're making the right decisions for like security, for APIs, for front end, for ops, right? You tell it those things, right? And you kind of like just have a conversation with it. At the end of that conversation, you say, take everything that we just discussed here and we've agreed on and turn it into a rules file, right, for Cursor, right? And once it does that, it'll give you a single rules file. You can now come back in here into Cursor and ask it to split it like I just did, right? And you can see it's been split. So I'm going to stop it here, right? Because I don't want to be wasting my tokens. And again, because I know I'm not going to take what it's going to spit out to me because I don't want it. I have my own rules. And you can see once that happens, it will create the files for you, all right, in your rules folder in .cursor. And there you have it, right? And again, don't forget, after you do that, you want to go back to the command palette, Control-Shift-P, or you go to View. And then once you're here, you just go like Developer, Reload Window. Right? You click that, boom. It will reload it. You'll see like your screen flicker, right? That's kind of like the window being reloaded. And then once you have that, don't forget to ask the cursor agent, like, hey, what rules are being followed? Just to kind of confirm everything is on the up and up. And once you have that, you now have rules, right? That's being fed into your cursor ID, your cursor agent. And another way to actually check it out is that if you look here, right, just right here next to the context, right? Look at this. See how it adds the files to the context? You see how it says 6 files are here? So I know that my six rule files are being added to every single command or every single request I am sending to the AI agent, the coding agent. I now have that file, those files actually applied, right? And again, we can get into much more technical stuff in terms of why this works better now than before, right? And which sort of like models work better, right? But one of the things to know is obviously as we go forward, having models with larger context size, i.e. the amount of information they can keep in their brain, right? This stuff becomes even more and more powerful, right? Because with ChatGPT 5, right? I mean, the window is so large that we can write some pretty in-depth and detailed, right, rules files, and that means that we can get better and better and more consistent with the code that we write. And here's the biggest thing of all of this, right? When I say consistency, you know how that actually pays off. It pays off in time because we're more standardized. It also pays off in cost because now we spend less time redoing things that don't come out correctly. And one of the things I will say is, as you're doing this, right, your rules files are not gonna stay stable, right? So they don't get baselined the first time you do it. And what that means is, as you continue to code, sometimes you'll come across errors, right? Where, maybe the base knowledge of the LLM is wrong, and because it happens every now and then you go through a process, you fix it. Then what you do is that you just add more rules. You go like, hey, I notice there's a rule where I need to use a promise for X, Y, and Z when I do API calls, right? You put that into the rule file. And then once you do that, again, you go back to view, you go to the command palette, right? You reload the windows, right? You load up your rules again. So rules files are really good ways that as you come across issues that the LLM is getting wrong, once you solve them, you add them to your rules file. And then again, as I said before, the value of that now is that going forward, it's less likely that the AI makes the same mistake, which means that you're working faster and it means that you're saving money, right? Because you're paying for this, right? You're paying for this cost, you're paying for this token. So again, I hope this helps someone who's actually looking at it. This is one of the most important things that you can do. Trust me, right? For me, I go even deeper than this, right? I have specific ways that I write code, right? That is just my style, right? I load my style up in, right? I write code, as I said. I do a lot of API development. I do a lot of infrastructure as code development, right? I literally have Bibles that I feed in, right? So sometimes, and I can't help say this, so sometimes, for example, if I see someone say, oh, I can create this faster in n8n, I go like, well, not for me, right? Because once I load up my rules file, it's sometimes as easy as really vibe coding infrastructure, vibe coding APIs, which for a lot of people, that takes a lot of time. But for me, it doesn't, because it's super simple because of my rules files, right? And I keep on evolving them as time goes along, as I learn more. So one of the best things you can do is keep on evolving your rules files for different types of projects. Make sure you're using the right set of rule files for the project at hand. And if you're doing this, you're going to be able to code faster and faster and faster and cheaper and cheaper and cheaper and better. And even as importantly, have a more standardized way of coding across multiple projects if you're doing multiple projects, right? So with that being said, I am out, all right, for today. And I hope this provided some value to someone out there.